Welcome to another episode of Pensado's Place. He's Dave Pensado. I'm Herb Trawick, and in a minute, you're going to meet our guest, the art of vocal contracting with Edie Lehmann Boddicker. But first, mark down a couple of fun learning opportunities. We're going to have DAW Wars with our man, TRAPMONEYBENNY. On September 1st, Benny will compare FL Studio versus Ableton, how to utilize both, the differences between, shortcuts, looping, swing, velocity, all the good stuff that you'll need to know. He'll be at the 1500 Sound Academy Saturday, September 1st from 4 to 7 p.m. Go to 1500sound.academy to sign up. Tell him Pensado sent you. And then if you're down Nashville way, you know how we feel about the awesome Blackbird Academy. They've got classes open for live sound engineering in October and January. You know how good the school is, and more importantly, you know the track record of their graduates. You want a job? Go to the Blackbird Academy. Hit karma at theblackbirdacademy.com or go to the blackbirdacademy.com website. Tell her we said hello as usual. We're good friends. And sign up and learn your craft and go make a whole bunch of bread. And finally, just because you're so kind to us, take a moment to like, subscribe, and hit the notify button so you don't miss anything. We got a lot of stuff going on. And Dave and I would appreciate that, as well as our friends at Avid and Warm Audio and Sonarworks and Groove 3 and Isotope. We all appreciate you. DP, what's this week's ITL?
Herb, I came up with this kind of cool reverb that I want to share with you guys. Check it out. Sometimes I like to take an expensive piece of gear or plug-in and put it next to an inexpensive one. Now, the reason I like to do that is because the expensive one sounds more expensive, the less expensive one sounds less expensive. It just gives you a really cool feeling. Recently, a plug-in manufacturer called Audio Damage came out with a very, very, very good copy and emulation of an old reverb from the 80s, early 80s by Radio Shack. Called Rat Shack. I liked it back then, but I didn't know enough to know that it was going to be cool. It's really cool. This is my friend David Platolero, and the song is called Lionheart. Check this out. This is with a printed 2016, which is my favorite vocal reverb. That's what you see here, printed. And then right above it, this is the Rat Shack. I know I'm going to say that wrong before this ITL is over. Check this out.
When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light. Somehow when everything's wrong.
And so that's a combination of the Rat Shack on the left and the a little bit to the left and the 2016 to the right. Now watch when I mute the 2016. All we're hearing is the Rat.
When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light.
Okay, now let's just 2016.
When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light.
Both.
Somehow when everything's wrong, I know I'll be.
I just could listen to that all day long. That's some good stuff. Now let me show you what I got here. It's a VST plugin. And this is one of my favorite wrappers. This is called DDMF. It allows you to run all VSTs just about, I think. Now here's what it looks like. Are you ready? Check it out. It's lovely, right? This little guy is amazing. Now check this out. I'm sure a lot of you know and remember, but the old reverbs were actually constructed from a lot of tight delays, and I'm pretty sure that's what this one's doing. And so you had to find a way to smooth those delays out and create a reverb from them. So you'll hear comb filtering is what we call, like if you hit a sharp object, it makes a sharp sound in a long, narrow hallway, you'll hear like that. Watch this.
Have a fighting desire. When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light. Somehow when everything's wrong,
Little distortion.
no, I'll be alright. Just when my faith is gone, hope will.
I don't know where these were, but I'm just going to put it close.
Somehow when I can move on.
So what I did was I wanted to smooth out some of those comb filtering effects. And so here's what I did. I used the Valhalla space modulator.
When the darkness is closing closing in.
Okay, that's with it. Watch this.
When the darkness is closing in.
You hear it's kind of like that hallway thing I was telling you about. Then add a little color. I got the devil lot.
When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light. Somehow when everything's wrong.
You hear it? And then let's put this guy back in.
Just when my faith is gone, when the darkness is closing in. When the darkness is closing in.
So this is with everything.
When the darkness is closing in, I'll be the light. Somehow when everything's wrong, I know I'll be alright. Just when my faith is gone, hope will rise. Somehow when I can move on, I find the strength to survive.
Hope you have fun with that. I'll see you soon.
What could possibly tie together all these things? La La Land, Star Wars, 30 Seconds to Mars, Harry Styles, Jimmy Fallon, James Corden, Jimmy Kimmel, X-Men, Hidden Figures, Pentatonics, even Famous Husbands. Well, it's the art and science of session singing and vocal contracting, and our guest is one of the best. Welcome to the desk, Edie Lehmann Boddicker.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank
So
you.
one of the fun things about hopefully what we do is we try to touch a lot of different bases, and it's very difficult to think about talking about music and not talk about singing.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the things that singing can go to become if all of a sudden you don't become the superstar singer or something like that. So session singing, just give us the definition of session singing.
Well, what I do is specifically a singer that is brought in to do either film, TV, all off camera, pretty much, film, TV, backup for artists, everything that you hear on the radio and on TV and in the movies that involve singers.
Because you can be a session singer for jingles, for commercials, for. So part of what was so interesting when we were going after you to book you was that there's a broader array of places for folks to think about, because a lot of times people get locked into, I can only get to LA and I can only become this, and that's not necessarily true. We've had producers and stuff who worked in the ad business in Chicago and other places, and you need singers for that, correct?
Well, in the 70s and the 80s, I would say that New York was the #1 place for jingle singers. We used to be called jingle singers until people go, what are jingles? And then, so jingle singing in the 70s and the 80s was primarily New York commercial. Second would be Chicago for commercials, and then LA was not so distant third in commercials for singing, for singers. And it was a real great time to be a session singer or a jingle singer in LA in the 80s. It was.
And has that changed? That part of the business has changed? Has it gone away?
Yeah, well, the jingle part kind of went away after we had a strike that was regarding cable and a lot of stuff that happened at SAG, and it was SAG then, and then it became SAG-AFTRA. But as a result of that strike, you heard a lot more needle drop on commercials, where you'd say, "Oh, that's like a record that I've heard," and so they would just say, "Okay, we're not going to record any original material now. We're just going to glean from the record industry," which it always seemed to me that jingles were chasing after being hip. Like the record industry. We were always trying to do what the records were doing and doing that in jingles. And so essentially they said, basically, we're just going to do away with the middleman. We're going to go right for the records, and we'll just license these records.
When you get hired to come in and do one of those sessions, do you get access to the music beforehand, or do you walk in and do it cold? So you.
No, part of being a session singer is to be able to read and to cold read. Occasionally, as the vocal contractor, I might get the music ahead of time so I know how to cast the vocals. But nobody, unless it's a real difficult session, we don't get
That's
out
a lot
there.
of accordions.
Well, so it's very much like Nashville. It's players who know how to read and can come in and immediately sit down and knock it out.
I haven't worked in Nashville, but I understand they use different methods of hand and numbers and We just
with your background, it's pretty simple to master, though.
My background is piano. As a pianist, I concertized until I was 19, and was very, very serious in the classical world.
General Hospital,
right?
You
well, they were looking for an actor who could play a concert pianist, and so they looked and looked and looked, and then they hired a person that said, finally. That said, no, I can learn to be a concert pianist over Thanksgiving vacation, and I'll be back. So, no.
So one of the things that is also interesting about reading your bio, and they're probably permutations of not the same thing, but different angles of the same art, because sometimes you're contracting a choir, sometimes you're the vocal contractor, sometimes you're the arranger, sometimes you're the conductor. There's lots of different things that fall under your hat, correct?
Thankfully.
Yeah, I guess so.
For the longest time, what I primarily did was just singing. I worked with Quincy. I worked with. I did very little road work, but I did go out on the road with Aretha and Quincy. But all the rest of the people that I worked with were in town, and I just worked as a singer for hire for all, and didn't put groups together. And then as you get older, and as you know the industry and the people available to you in the industry, and also if they find out your musical ability, you're entrusted with more. A composer will say, I'd like to use you because you can rewrite my charts.
Absolutely.
Or you can, you can lead, you can conduct the session, or you can go to the piano and teach everyone their parts. So that kind of increased, I was hoping, the longevity of a career that I was so grateful to have to begin with.
When you put together one of those 73-piece choirs, how do you do that? You select a certain amount of the different vocal ranges, and is it always people that you've had contact with, or is there?
Yes, you've got. Is this the big one? This is one of the big ones. Yeah, Ice Age.
I would have no clue how to stand in front of those people and get them to do anything other than leave.
I know every single person that I call.
Because it's a small community.
It's a small community, but I know intimately. I know people's voices. Around 300 of them, 300 or 400 maybe, that I select from a very, very large and tight. It's a large and tight community. There are no managers, there are no agents. Singers hire singers.
Okay.
So the person that you sing next to, I always tell people on the session, this is a community. If you don't hold each other up, that person could be responsible for your next job.
That's right.
So you have to be an advocate for each other, but singers will recommend other singers and they will hire other singers.
I was going to say the way to get in the community is likely by referral. Is that what happens?
It's all by that. It's all by people recommending you or saying, I'll ask a singer who I really like. I'll say, who do you like working with? Or who have you sang with recently that you think is really
It reminds me of the string community. The folks I know who are in the string community, it's a group of folks, and you can't get in unless you refer, and there's a level of professionalism that has to be there that's expected. And if you don't hold up your part, you won't stay part of the community.
Reading is really crucial.
Critical.
And I think with the loss of how music in the schools, has gone away, and it is very, very difficult to find up-and-coming singers. Even the great new a cappella community that has come in, gangbusters. A lot of them learn by rote.
Yeah.
And I say you have to go to Gerald White's class at SAG-AFTRA and take the singers sight reading course, at least for 1 year, and get your chops up. Because we can't be on a recording session in a big studio like this, which is time is money, and the conductor goes like this. It might be me, it might be the composer, it might be the orchestrator, and he'll say, "Well, we're not going to need to run this. We'll just give us our opening pitches, and everybody just read it down, and they'll take it.
Yep.
They'll take the rehearsal."
When you're conducting, like
yeah, I don't. I'm not a standard conductor.
Okay, but you're just more listening for mistakes and stuff. You're not actually keeping tempo or anything.
No, everybody generally nowadays they have click. I conduct to click, which means I don't even need the streamers anymore. That was the olden days where the streamers would go across. We all have click. They all have click, but they don't need me to beat time.
Right, you don't need to.
But what they do need are dynamics, cutoffs as big as day, because they're looking at music and they need to see me in the periphery, in their peripheral vision. They need to see where the cutoff is, and they need someone to orchestrate their sound, to teach them or to tell them which sound I want. Do I want a Bulgarian women's choir? Do I want a English boys choir sound from the sopranos? I want the men to sound like pirates or like Russian. You know, I more or less am like a director. I was just going to say that. More a director. That's the correlation. And a cheerleader. And really, if I'm doing this, I don't really have time for dynamics. They can't see me if I just do little. I have to be very, very big. As you see, my arms are like this for 4 hours or more. But I love it. That's really my jam. Where I love.
And to go back to a point to you guys, note to self. The reason that we push education so much on the show is because sometimes that's the difference between you getting the gig and not having the gig. So if you're hearing from a pro like this, that reading is important, and you're a singer, you may differentiate yourself by coming to wherever town you're going to and having those chops down instead of just doing it by all hail to the natural folks who do it that way. But for the profession you're talking about, and we talk about Nashville, you got to read. So I know it can get old that we push the vegetables at you and not just the meat. But the vegetables sometimes are what keeps you healthy and keeps you going. And
I'd say in the singer community, about 80 to 90% of the singers, session singers, are instrumentalists as well. So reading is, you know. And are you seeing an age difference because you don't see people who come along younger that are trained? No, I bring them all in. And I'm very global about my casting too. I really like to bring in the American scene very much so on my choirs.
You once did a humming part on a Dr. Zeus movie. Can you do that for me now? No. Come on, do it. Come on.
No, it was for, I think it was Lorax, or was it the Lorax, or the humming fishes? Yeah, you see? I'm not being paid.
That's right. That's a good point.
I can't believe you did a humming part.
Are there differences between the film demand and the television demand? Does the art form require what you do to be different, or is it pretty much the same thing?
I would say that every job is different. Every job has kind of a different thing. If I'm working with a star and they want to have a gospel choir, they don't quite know exactly what they want the gospel choir to do. So what I'll do is before the session, I'll write what I call elements, and I'll listen to their track. And I've worked with Jeff Basker a lot, who's a wonderful producer and an amazing musician and singer as well. And he'll have an idea of what he wants, but he wants to hear from me what this choir can do. So I don't have time for everybody to throw ideas at me. So I come in with written ideas of lines or things that will record, and they can build it into their track where they want it. That's what he did on A Sign of the Times for Harry Styles.
Oh, that was you?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah, and he had written a real big choir sound with high notes to the point where one of the girls goes, "Oh gosh, now I know why I'm on this session," because I had her singing high C's all the way. and then there's people like Katy Perry, where she has a good idea of what she wants. She'll have done a slight scratch demo of where she wants the voices to be, but she doesn't exactly know what she wants them to do, and it's going to be different with a 25-piece gospel choir.
Right.
So I'll write different elements for her using her ideas, and then on the session she might say, "Could your choir do this or that?" And then we'll teach it to them. Yeah.
So in the choir perspective, and sorry, I got 1,000 questions, but I had a scholarship for singing to go to school.
Yeah,
I had 2 or 3, but I didn't. I followed a different path. But my family were singers. We sang in church, all that kind of stuff. When you are casting for a choir, do you have go-to choirs or do you construct them?
Oh, I have no go-to choirs.
Okay, so you construct them.
Every person is individually specifically picked for that. And it's very difficult because I have very, very dear friends in the industry
that you have to say no to.
No, you can't use them on everything. And I'm also people's friend, and they can't use me on everything either. But I really take what the composer has given me as a request very seriously when I cast it, and try to go exactly in the direction that he or she is needing for that.
And then when you're there, do you just generally trust that the engineer is getting the right sound and the technical parts are being handled? Are you hearing it? And
depends on who the engineer is, and if the engineer is used to and accustomed to vocals. There have been times when I've come into a place where, let's say there's 8 of us, and the engineer has us, in a straight line in the studio, and I say, "Is there a reason for this, or can we move this around?" And he'll say, "Okay." And I said, "I'd like to be in a U, and the conductor can be sort of in the middle, and I'd like to be able to hear." Not so much in the straight line. I'd like to hear from the other side. The guys are over there, and the sopranos are here, and so it's a collaborative effort. Generally, to some degree, I'll ask a well-known engineer if he has a preference how he'd like us to stand. Sometimes he likes sopranos, altos, tenors, bass, he or she, and then sometimes they want sopranos, altos, tenors, and then bass up front in the big Sony sound studios because they want to be able to mic the basses a little bit closer. And
And are you always listening on headphones, or do you ever?
I'm a little bit of a rebel in that I don't like for the booth to talk to me only. And there are different
like
people are different. I'm not trying to talk bad about it if somebody wants it differently.
Please do. It makes our show more interesting.
But if they can't, I don't want to say things twice. I don't want them to have to say things twice, to say it to me like it's a secret, and then I'm going to now tell the singers what the booth is saying. I want the singers to hear what I'm hearing, and then it goes twice as fast, and it keeps the hierarchy more level, level.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And then the other thing is with headphones. We are on single headphones, and people now have their own that they bring and they plug in. So.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
Pretty cool.
I'm not really here as a host.
In-ears.
I'm here as a fan. Yeah, I was going to say.
In-ears, yeah.
I really wondered if you had in-ears.
Yeah.
Okay,
in-ears. I use in-ears maybe half the time.
Customized for your ears?
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Absolutely.
NAMM show 2 years ago.
Had them shot. And then,
they put the foam in or whatever in the thing.
We have some too.
Yeah.
It was sort of weird what was being done.
Yeah.
How do the singers warm up?
Hopefully. Most of them do.
Is it the old tea and lemon thing, or is it?
They warm up before they get to the session in the car, if they have a long commute. But they warm up using scales, arpeggios.
So when you walk in, it's time to go.
Oh, it's time to go.
It's time to go.
Yeah. In fact, you walk in.
She's tough, Herb. She's tough.
Oh, I know. Hans says, that I'm the toughest vocal contractor he knows. That's a compliment from a German to a German.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, you have to come in at least a half hour beforehand, do all your paperwork, because you can't take valuable studio time to do the paperwork.
Right.
You have to do all that, and then and then put that aside 10 minutes before, get ready to mount the mics. And the positioning, the vocal contractor tells you where you're going to be standing on mic, and have to have an idea at that point what the engineer wants to hear and how he wants it to be. If there's risers, there might be 3 rows. I've had John Powell has used 83 voices.
Wow.
The biggest SAG session that we know of today.
Wow.
And he's known to he has the
likes it
clout.
big.
Yeah. And he likes a lot of different timbres. He doesn't just like the same timbre over and over and over again with mults and stacks. He likes to hear a large
Are those Ice Age, Lorax?
Yeah. And see, 83, I think that might have been Lorax.
I've gone to so many
The Ice Ages were great too. 64, 65. One of the Ice Ages, you saw all the accordions. We called that Accordiageddon. That was for Ice Age 4. And actually, my husband happens to have a couple,
Michael?
30 or 40
and who is
accordions.
that guy? Who is your husband?
Michael Boddicker.
Wait a minute. Michael has how many accordions?
How many, honey? 30?
49.
But who's counting? 49. So we used about 36 of them on that session.
Wow.
And John Powell had asked for it, and Jermaine Franco, who's also a composer. Everybody who could play any kind of keyboard, I played an accordion. So we just worked. We had is it Warner Brothers? I think was it? Yeah.
What were you playing? I mean, what was the music?
It was just he was creating an instrument. I would say samples, but he wanted the real instrument, and he wanted multiples of real accordions. And actually, my mother-in-law used to do accordion orchestras of 100 and 200 accordions, where she would be in Iowa, she would be at a concert hall, the stage was this way, and she would be facing the audience, and all the accordion players were in the audience, and they were playing.
Wow. Well, that means when they do that, they suck all the air out of the room. That's like a lot of accordions.
Well, if you have 49 of them and you're in a small room, you're going to die.
I know.
Under that concept.
I used to watch the Lawrence Welk show.
Yeah, me too.
And,
I sang the Lawrence Welk show.
I was too young.
Yeah, he was the original hip hop artist.
See how the bubbles.
Yeah.
MC Lawrence.
And there was something about the accordion. I was playing guitar and piano at a young age, and I saw an accordion and all those buttons on the other side.
Oh, man.
That fascinated me, and I came that close to getting an accordion. My father stopped my mother from buying it.
Well, see, Myra and Florin actually stayed at my in-laws' home in Iowa. So that's if you know Myra and Florin?
I think that was the guy and the young girl that danced real pretty and all that.
Myra and Florin was the accordion player on the show that played the pants off the accordion.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the more famous ones.
Take me back to... So at the vocal contractor, you also now have to oversee the business side of it. Is there paperwork to that?
Yeah. Oh, okay. When I'm called by either the composer, the studio, or Gina Zamiti, orchestral contractor, the very first thing is we need a budget. Okay. And I work union. I'm only union, SAG-AFTRA. So she'll say, what would it cost us to do
X.
Yeah. How many singers, if we do a group 50 or group 60, and how much will it cost? And 3-hour session, or is it an 8-hour day? And with multi-tracking, with sweetening, or, and so I have to figure all that out ahead of time and submit a budget. So I just recently had been asked if I could put together an 80-piece choir and a 30-piece children's choir, and they wanted a budget. And it was for a live show and with 1 or 2 rehearsals possibly. So I really went to the bottom bare minimum of what singers could and would work for. And I submitted the budget, and it was just like, whoa, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I said, well, why would you want 110 singers? And I could even get rid of a rehearsal and just put it all on one day, the dress and the concert, and we'll do it for this little bit. And they're like, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking.
That sounds
it's
like
free.
That sounds like a Chris Rock gag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
how much is one French fry?
Yeah, and this wasn't this wasn't even a union gig. This was non-covered. It was uncovered work.
Wow.
So I just charged basically gas money plus maybe a little bit. But
And that's
now so it happens.
Do you get residuals, and do the people that sing for you get residuals, or is it a one-time pay?
Yeah, it depends on what the project is.
Okay.
With film, as the vocal contractor, I must be a member of the singing group.
Okay.
So I am not just the person that calls the singers.
You have to be.
I have to be
one of the singers.
One of the singers. I'm either one of the singers or I'm conducting. So either way. So with film, SAG-AFTRA has a residual system, which they're called Supplemental Markets. And once the film has been released, you've been paid for the session. Then as it goes to DVD, video, internet rental, internet free, electronic sell-through, foreign, network, pay TV, free TV, those are separate fees, residuals. But SAG-AFTRA receives a fixed portion of the residual pie. And then within that fixed portion, the individual SAG members share in that pie, depending on how much they worked. And that includes the actors, that includes, anybody who's SAG-AFTRA that worked on the film, on camera and off camera.
When you have big and or small sessions, are you dictating to that engineer what microphones you want for that, or do you let them make the choice?
Not generally.
Okay.
I mean, there'll be times when I'll ask, do you want to would you put some up high and capture more of the big sound, or do you want it mic'd close? Like Richard Carpenter likes mic'd pretty closely, because that's
From
the Carpenter sound. Yeah, that's one of their sounds was always a close mic'd. But he also likes the ambient, the room as well. And so you have mics up there, you have mics up close. So yeah, I don't generally have to do that. There are people that are really excellent at doing that can do that.
And in your history, you went on the road a couple of times.
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, with...
Better to stay at home?
Well, I'll tell you what, when Quincy had us go out on the road, he had all the major session players on his tour, and the way he did it was he said, look, we're only going to do weekends, and we'll be back. You can do all your gigs, you can do all your studio gigs during the week, and then we'll just work on weekends. I love you, Q, but it became Thursday through Monday through Tuesday, but he had all the Seawind horns, he had JR, he had Michael Boddicker on synthesizer, he had filling gains, he had amazing group. And then the singers were Patty Austin, James Ingram, and then Phil Perry, Phil Ingram, and me.
Amazing.
And that was
Amazing.
That was the road group for the summer of '82, I think it was.
That was royalty.
You can't. It's hard if you turn down work in town, even once or twice, because you're out on the road. They just go, "Oh, that person's a road singer." They want the people that are there in town. So once you leave, if you turn down work enough, that slot is filled, and it's hard to get your foot in the door to get into that work.
If there's a young singer watching, they aspire to do what you do, or they have dreams of that, what advice would you give them?
I would say learn an instrument, piano, just become really comfortable with keyboard, learn how to read, and then put your stuff out there. Nowadays, you can put it on SoundCloud, you can put it on YouTube, you have YouTube channels.
So social media is important.
Social media is important. If you're in LA, find other singers, offer to sing on their live gigs for free, and get to know who the singers are that are doing session work. If you are able to join the union, great. If not, then just wait until your chance comes to join. But hang out with singers. There are a lot of venues that use jingle singers and your session singers, and you can get to know them, sing with them, and then also I have regular teachers that send me their singing teachers that send me their best students.
Oh, really?
And I'll listen to all their stuff, and we'll meet for coffee. I'll talk to them and see what it is they want to do, see what it is they do really well. If there's a special skill, I can recommend them for work when it comes, and I try to listen to every single one.
Wow.
And
So the number one deal breaker would be reading?
It's a big deal. It's not a deal breaker because there's
what's
still
the number one deal breaker?
attitude.
Really?
Maybe.
Well, that makes sense.
Because what we do is so collaborative that if a singer comes in and is all that,
Toxic. Next.
you know, there's too many that really want to do it and that really want to get along.
Is the session singing, vocal contracting scene as vibrant in other cities as LA? New York, Nashville, Atlanta?
Maybe. I think a lot of it has gone to, since the internet, a lot of it has gone just underground, even in LA. New York, it's a little harder because used to be, there were big jingle houses there. And now I don't quite know the singer community in other towns as well. I understand that LA still is, well, it's rocking because people come here for a number of reasons, but there are great a cappella groups here. There's the a cappella community and academy that Ben Bram has, and it's just a really, really great place for singers to collaborate with musicians and have bands like what Sheryl Crow did, you know, with the Tuesday night group that she's, you know, when she was working out her stuff, she found a band and they just worked out her stuff with Bill Bottrell and getting it together until she was like smoking. But she came from Indiana and she came here to LA to do session work and went into that world. Not every session singer is a wannabe star.
Right.
I mean, they just want to work.
Right.
They just want to sing.
Most singers want to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And then there's the Master Chorale, the LA Master Chorale, and the Los Robles Master Chorale. Great places to find singers that are serious about singing, and more, and the LA Choral Lab also. These are places where anybody can audition. LA Choral Lab, LA Choral Lab, Los Robles Master Chorale, the LA, Los Angeles Master Chorale, a lot of choirs, Angel City Chorale, and there are a lot of places where they can just work out their craft, meet other singers, and hear about other things going on, and say, "Oh, can I audition for that?" Or
Do you have favorite rooms you like to work in?
rooms.
Yeah.
Wow, we love Sony. I mean, just
In New York?
no, Sony
Studio.
studios here, the Barbra Streisand scoring studio.
Amazing.
I love Fox, the scoring
Thomas Newman.
the Newman scoring stage at Fox. I love East West. I love Capitol.
Capitol.
What a classic.
East West was, you know, United Western. I mean, all the names before. I've been recording there for years and years and years. But and I love being in a composer's studio because, like Hunt's has great rooms at Remote Control in Santa Monica, and then there's John Powell has a great room at his not a home studio. It's a separate building from his home, and then there's Danny Elfman has his own studio, and everywhere's good.
So now I'm going to ask you the intrusive question, and if it's a no, it's okay. Sometimes there's nothing for our audience that's better than being able to see something. So if there's ever a time where you're working and we could quietly bring cameras in and just watch and do whatever, and if we could get all the permissions and so on and so forth, we would
Without
love
a
to
doubt.
do that.
Without a doubt.
So
Without a doubt.
I'll take Michael to sushi in Encino because we know where you guys can't see it, but
right.
that's where all this gestated.
That's great.
Love to see you doing what you're. I'm a moviegoer, so I have heard so much of your work. There's not many movies on your credits that I haven't gone to, except for a few. And as the time period that we came up, this is not an old person story, but when singing was such a prevalent and important art form, whether you were mixing or recording or listening or buying, you knew and understood just how precious that art form was. So it's nice to see that it's still in hands that take care of it that way.
All I do is try to get work for singers. I'm always on the lookout to try to bring more work into the singer community and to keep so many singers that are reliant on this work, to keep them employed and engaged and get their medical and get their health and insurance and pensions.
Let me ask you this too. I meant to ask you this. How do you protect your voice? Do you do things to make sure? I remember when I was back when I was working with Brian McKnight, because Brian was such an excellent singer, we were in touch with excellent singers all the time. Aretha, Celine, Mariah, Whitney. It was really a luxury to be involved with that because you got with so many art. And I remember we were in Celine's dressing room. I think she was performing that night, and she would just put herself on vocal restriction that whole day and just not talk, not do anything. Right. Are there standard things that you do to?
Standard things would be avoid all air conditioning and
a big
any
Aretha
forced
thing.
Yeah, Aretha's been on that.
Aretha would cut you out if you're in an air conditioned room. Yeah.
Air conditioning or forced heat. Anything artificial air is pretty bad.
Not good.
Steam is good, really, to steam
Loosens
the chords. Certain people also avoid dairy. Just keep the chords clean. Avoid nuts because that creates a mouth noise. Voiceover people know that, especially like, have you been eating cashews? Eating apples is good because the pectin or whatever in the apples is good for that. Hot tea, obviously, with a little lemon, a little honey. Every singer has kind of their thing, but I find dry, forced air, if it's cold or hot, is my, it's not good for the throat.
We close the show on a medical report. That's so cool. Thank you for joining us. This is something that is really special and something that we get to bring the audience and in a way that hopefully it was fun for you.
It was very fun.
Oh, good. Yeah. Good. Dave, why don't you take us home?
Herb's always been looking out for you guys for alternate things to do, and man, I can't think of anything that would be more fun than this.
The accordions?
I can't, I can play an accordion, but I can't sing.
It's okay. She'll do the singing.
I tried, and nobody liked it, but check this out. I'm fascinated by this, and I think there's so much more for you to see and know about Edie. She's exemplary of what a great human being in the music community is and what that worth is to us. So check it out. We'll see you next week.
See you.